JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Thursday, April 17th, 9 a.m. Talk quick about the market, some names I'm looking at, go from there. Don't forget, markets close tomorrow. So today is pretty much option expiration Friday. Take a look at S&P futures. Look like we're going to bounce a little bit up about 0.5%. Been chopping around, just hit lows at 7 a.m. And that's on the heels of yesterday's sell-off. So only down 2% yesterday at the midst of the sell-off in the afternoon. We were down, S&P was down 3% before an end of day bounce. Uh, let's see here. Yeah, about 3:30 we hit lows, 520.29. And I was saying it yesterday afternoon on the rant. It was like if you were looking for a bone from Powell, if he wanted Powell to throw the market a bone. He did not do that yesterday. If anything but, pretty much all his responses from the interview and the prepared remarks pointed to the Fed just kind of staying the course, right? Holding pat, not looking to do anything just yet, waiting to see how the tariff situation plays out. It did warn of higher inflation, lower growth, but outside of that, nothing. So the market didn't like that. They were hoping, and even remarks around the Fed put, like, what would happen if things really if the shit hit the fan? Is the Fed going to step in? And he pretty much said no. And then he said, and it was almost like comical. It's like, oh, markets are functioning properly, right? So it's kind of like I have a feeling that comment's going to come bite him in the ass. Maybe not. Hopefully not. But so that was kind of yesterday afternoon. Of course, in the morning, you had the NVIDIA news. Well, actually, it was after hours on Tuesday, where they talked about over a $5 billion charge for those H2O chips. H2O chips supposed to go to China. Then in ASML earnings, not so good. Then you had NVIDIA giving the same kind of warning in regards to the charge, but there's only 300 million. And then that just kind of weighed on the markets. And then it's like outside, it's like the market, it, it, it feels like if we don't have any kind of like positive updates, it in regards to the tariffs, any resolution, it's like I feel like it we're just a crash course back to the lows, 481 on the SPY. That you would think that's going to happen. Do I give that a high probability? I'm still optimistic, right? Maybe like a 10% probability that might happen, but if we go into next week and there's no more updates, I mean, that probability is going to increase. And after the close yesterday, you had POTUS coming out talking about positive talks with Japan, but still no concrete deal on that front. And then this morning, POTUS is out with some comments, and it's like, I mean, it's like I just laugh, right? Because if I have some respect for Powell because I mean, he's worked through some of these crazy events that have happened over the last couple of years. It doesn't seem like it, but it was pretty recent. We had those Silicon Valley Bank, right? The big bank runs, and you had the bears out saying, "Oh my gosh, here we go." It's the start of a financial crisis, and now it's like almost everybody forgets about that, right? Um, so I mean, there's a lot of events, obviously, with the COVID situation. Um, so Powell, he comes on and tweets this morning, or at least on his Truth Social, saying Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. It's like all I can do is just laugh. So you hope, my hope is that you have a branch that is not biased, right? That the Fed can remain unchained from the political things that are going on, whether it be right, left, center, and just focus on the data, right? And that's what he's been doing. So hopefully that continues, um, because I mean, if there's anything, and I keep saying, I always try and find a glass half full scenarios, some positive. Or at least silver linings of what's going on is that the Fed hasn't cut rates. There's no emergency meeting. Yeah, there's no weekend meeting with the Fed's going to, there's no banks meeting over the weekend to do bailouts. So uh, that's hopefully that continues. All right, so that's kind of the overall market. I mean, I was hoping, the spots I had on the SPY at 524, that got cut through like a hot knife through butter, got down to 520. So watching that today, if we do have some crazy sell off. On the flip side, 534 on the upside, and then 537. There was actually a fat finger at 537, 537.89. It's still there on my chart. Hopefully that gets erased because the highs yesterday on the SPY was 535 and change. But maybe that's a sign. I always call it the bat signal when we get these fat fingers. Always seems similar to like gap fills. Always seems to get tapped. Uh, but that's kind of it. Today, probably hopefully some wide ranges here, tradable ranges. I'll be more aggressive like I've been the last couple of weeks on these option expiration days for some lottos, because when we have these wide moves, that some of these lottos can turn small into big very quickly. And then on the flip side, when I get these lottos, a lot of times they expire. So getting a lotto with the premise right off the bat that it's probably going to go to zero, right? That's how you got to trade some of these. Otherwise, it becomes a rough option expiration day. All right, so that's overall markets. Then yields keep tumbling. So that big narrative around the yields, and maybe it comes its head, pops its head back next week. But the fact that the U.S. Treasuries were selling off, that hasn't been the case the last couple of days. So hopefully that continues. And then the VIX, and all things considered, I mean, VIX only up 8%, was up over double digits at the lows yesterday, but still only up 8%. So I think it's what 10 days of the VIX over 30. That hasn't happened since 2022. I mean, that's 3 years ago. Uh, Hopefully the VIX can start normalizing into the 20s, and then maybe the premiums come out, make trades a little easier on weekly strikes outside of trading Thursdays and Fridays. All right, that's overall market. So the individual names, and I had Johnson and Johnson to watch this the last 2 days. Finally pulled the trigger. You start looking at 200-day moving averages 544, 554.84. Their commentary around their earnings call, I thought was bullish, right? In the face of tariffs, they think they can do well, and they can work around possible issues with logistics on tariffs. And if there are some deals that work out, I think it not only Johnson Johnson goes up, even with the situation right now, but if stuff gets alleviated, I think it starts heading back over 160 and beyond. So 154 and change. If it breaks over the 50-day and closes above that, I think 159 comes next week. Hopefully towards the start of the week. Lock some of the calls in, ride the rest. And my calls were actually green until the end of the day. So really like that one. As the market was tumbling after the prepared remarks by Powell in his interview, I went and got those SQQ calls as kind of a hedge. Within an hour, I was able to lock some out for nearly 100%, and then about 30 minutes later for about over 300%. And I just held the last few as a hedge into today. SQQ continues to be a great position. Not, I mean, for making money, right? I'm not just trading it just to protect, right? I'm trading to make money. But the premiums yesterday, you looked, I'm like the 42s, they were like 15 cents and 8 cents, 20 cents since when we started tumbling. And like I was saying yesterday afternoon, it's not like I want, not like SQQQ needs to get to 42. It just needs to rally a little bit. And then it was 38, 39. Once that happened, the calls just started gaining a lot of premium. So I'll continue to look for that one as a hedge. I'm not going to add anything on the weekly strikes, but if we do somehow find I guess a pullback today or some pressure, I'll look for some calls there just as a lotto. And then some other names. So this morning, LLY came out with their update on their phase 3 study for their oral GLP-1 drug. And it's not GLP-1. It's like it's supposedly it's diabetes, but we all know it's for weight loss. Came in better than expected. Looks like they're going to come out or try and bring that to market by the end of the year. So not bullish really for some of these other names, which saw some of the GLP-1 names rallying on the news that Pfizer was pulling out its weight loss drug. So I was looking at GPCR on Tuesday. Tuesday morning, it was on the watch list. It was sitting there at 19 and change. The 20 calls were 40 cents. And I'm like, so I couldn't pull the trigger. Then yesterday I was watching, looked like, hey, maybe it was going to do a resumption. Then the market found some pressure, so I passed. And I'm like, oh, good thing I didn't. And then this morning, LLY comes out with that news. And at first I'm like, oh, that's negative. I look at VKTX, that's down. I look at some of these other names in the space. And then you look at GPCR and it's $26 for a second. I'm like, what the heck? And then you realize that the phase 3 study for LLY is the same molecule that GPCR uses. So you couple that data this morning with the news of Pfizer, and you have to think this is going to trade into the 25s and beyond in the coming weeks. So option expiration is today for the April strikes. I don't know if I'll get 25s. I don't know if I'll trade up there, but I may look for some May or June calls because it was one of my top 5 stocks last year, and I think at some point there's going to be M&A, especially if the market finds footing over the next couple of weeks. So and not only that, I think Pfizer's kind of like up against the wall. They got to do something. And some of these other mega cap biotech names that don't have any piece of this GLP-1 space, you have to think, especially with some of these stocks, they're so far off their highs that you have to think they're going to come out and acquire. So don't be surprised if I had some strikes there on GPCR. Dell laid an egg. It actually looked like it was going to go red to green yesterday morning after the open, and then it just fizzled. I'll take this one off my watch list short term. I do think if there's resolution, especially on the China side, Dell rallies into the hundreds. And then some other lotto names that I might try. Reddit. I was looking at the hundreds and 101s yesterday. Might visit those today. Strategy, certainly looking at that for possible lottos. GameStop, the premiums came out yesterday on the call, so the Junes look interesting on a risk-reward basis now. So probably going to add those today. And also earnings next week. So, TSM reported earnings this morning. beat and raise, so monster quarter, monster beat, raised guidance, and then they also said right now they don't see any issues with the current environment and customers, but they know that uncertainty and risks are probably on the horizon, and they're going to be prudent, right, to react if things do happen. So, uh, kind of bullish commentary. And then I put on a watch list. Like that's why these deals need to happen soon because everybody, it's like that. All these companies know that something's on the horizon, right? And there's uncertainty, and it's not good uncertainty. So once these get clarified, I think then we can find some footing. But the longer this goes, the worse it becomes. Next week we have earnings. There's not much in the way. I mean, there's IBM, Tesla, Google reports, and then the week after is the big week where you have Apple, Amazon, Meta. So that the commentary next week and into the following week is probably going to steal the limelight for the foreseeable future. And of course, we have Netflix after the close, which again, I keep that Netflix is going to have a monster quarter. This is and it's just a matter of how the market reacts to it. And if is it going to be a sell the news? Is it going to be 1100 come Monday? Is it going to be under 900? Not convicted enough to trade either side, so I'll just get some popcorn out and watch. And that's it, folks. If things get crazy, I'll be back on audio later. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.